In this lesson, we will talk about the Django authentication system. Django provides an inbuilt authentication system to boost up the development. In this lesson, we will start with the registration process and create a form in the front end so that the user can create their account from the front end. So let's get back to the editor and figure out how we can do that. So let's start by adding a new path in our urls.py file. So here we have added a new path, register, which will execute the method register user, which we will add in our views file. So here at the bottom, let's add the method. This register user method will handle two types of requests. One is post, another one is get request. So let's add the if condition first. Now, before we proceed into the code block inside if or else, we need to create a form called registration form inside our forms.py file. This form will provide the registration form to the front end. This registration form is going to be a model form. Basically, if you are creating a database-driven application, then there may be some cases where a form needs all the fields which are available in the models file. Suppose in our case, the class task contains two fields, text and is completed. And here we have also mentioned the type of those fields. So Django provides model form which can, so for the registration form, we first need to import the user creation form, which is available by default in Django. Now we have imported the user creation form from the django.contrib.auth.forms. Now we will pass the user creation form class inside our class registration form. So this way the registration form will inherit the user creation form. Now we will use the class meta to create a model form. Inside the class meta, we can pass many information, but for now we will need two things which are necessary. The first one is the name of model, which we can place like this. And the second one is the name of fields that we want to use in this registration form. The user model contains a lot of fields, and now we can place the name of fields which we actually want in our form. So let's start with the username, first name, last name, the email of user, password 1, and the last one, password 2. So there are basically two password fields available, password 1 and password 2. The second password field is for password confirmation. So we have imported all the fields available in the model file called user model, and we have placed all those fields inside the fields array, all list. So in order to use this, we first need to import user model in this forms.py file. So everything is done for forms.py file. So let's move ahead inside our views.py file and start with the register user method. So inside the request method post, we will first initialize the registration form with the post field values. We have not imported this form from our forms.py file yet. So let's go to the top. And here, after the task form, we will add a new form called registration form. So now, if the form is valid, we will save the user into the database. And we can do that simply by using form.save. When we are using a model form, then in that case, we can just execute the method save on the form itself. After the user is saved, we will take the username and password from the user in order to initiate the login process. Here, after saving the form, we are taking the username and password from the form. We are using cleaned data just because before saving the form, each field in form class is not only responsible for validating the data, but also for clearing it. Once we execute the form.isValid method, then after that, the fields associated with the form is available in form of a dictionary inside the cleaned data. So we can use this cleaned data to get the form values. Here we are getting the username which the user has supplied in the specific form and also getting the password. Once we get the username and password, we can start with the authentication process. Here we are calling the authenticate method, and inside that method we are passing the username and password. This authenticate method will check for the user in the database by providing the username and password. If we found any user, then in that case it will be assigned to this object. Now after that we will call the login method. This login method will create a new session for this specific user. Once the login is successful, we will redirect the user to the dashboard. The authenticate and login, we need to import these two methods. So let's go to the top and import those methods from Django.contrib.auth, we have imported three methods: authenticate, login, and logout. But for this lesson, we will need these two methods only. We will talk about logout later. So let's get back to our method register user. So if the request is method post, then in that case, we are initiating the registration form by supplying the values supplied by the front-end user. And after that, we are checking if the form is valid or not. If the form is valid, then we are saving the user into the database, authenticating the user, and finally creating a new session for this specific user. Now, what if the form is not valid? If the form is not valid, then we will just render the registration page, and also we will get all the error messages associated with this specific form. And finally, for the GET request, we will just fetch the form and render the view. So here we need to create two things. The first one is the registration.html template and a new method called dashboard, which will display the currently logged in user's dashboard. So let's start with the template first. Before adding anything into this registration.html template, we will create a layout file called app.html. Basically, the concept behind a layout file is when there are multiple templates which are sharing a similar layout, then in that case, we can create a single layout template and we can extend that in all of our templates. So here we are creating a layout template called app.html, and inside the body section, we will create a block called content. And now let's get back to the registration.html file. We can use the extend command. So whatever we want to display in the registration.html template should be placed inside this block. We are going to use Bootstrap for this section. Here the form action will be register user. And the method will be post. So here inside the form, we have added the CSRF token and rendered our form as paragraphs. Now let's save this. And here is one thing we need to change. In order to use the extends command, we need to pass the relative path to the file app.html. Now let's save it and let's check it in our browser. Here we can see the output. This is our registration form with the fields username, first name, last name, email address, password, and a password confirmation. And these values are the help messages for a specific field which are being displayed here. So now we will import Bootstrap in our layout file and change this completely. So let's go to Bootstrap. Here you can see the latest version of Bootstrap, which is 4.5. Go to Get Started, and from here we can copy all the CSS and JavaScript files. Here I have added all the CSS and JavaScript files of Bootstrap in the app.html layout file. Now once you save this, and let's get back to our browser, you will get a similar output. So here Bootstrap is working perfectly. Now in order to change the form fields, we need to add the form control class in each of these fields. Now in order to do the form templating part, we can just use a library called Django Crispy Forms. Here you can find the documentation, and let's follow the installation process. So let's install this library. Now in order to install, we will run the command here. pip install Django Crispy Forms. So here it is installed. Now after the installation is finished, we need to go to the settings.py file, and here in the installed apps section we will add Crispy Forms. And at the bottom we will create a new variable, crispy template back, and we will be using Bootstrap 4. Once this is done, let's save this file and get back to our registration folder, registration template, and here we need to do few changes. The first thing we will do is we need to load Crispy Forms tags. And after that, now we will add crispy here like this. Now save this and let's start the server. Our server has started. Now let's get back to the browser. So here you can see the form is ready with Bootstrap 4. Now let's check with inspect, and here you can see the classes like form control are already added by default using Django Crispy Forms. So this is how you can use Django Crispy Forms along with Bootstrap to create this kind of UI. We are going to divide the user registration process into 2 lessons. In this lesson, we have learned how to create the registration form. Along with that, how we can handle this form. In the next lesson, we will see whether this form is working correctly or not. And we will also create the dashboard for the user so that we can redirect the users once they log in.